The Accessibility Breakdown by Inclusion Impact Accessibility.
Hey, welcome to the Accessibility Breakdown. I am Mark, and
I'm Justin.
You jumped in early this week. Every week we pay tribute to those who stand out to us as leading by accessibility by picking 3 topics that strike us in some way. This week we're going to talk about the big thing everybody's talking about, and that is the recent extension or extensions to the Title II guidelines, or the Title II. It's a million ways to refer to this, but like the Title II
I can think of
ruling.
lots of ways, but none of them are nice right
now. But so we'll get into that. I'm sure if you've been paying attention to accessibility at all, you know what's up with that. And then we're going to talk about this article about EN 301549. It's called EN 301549, the accessibility standard that isn't accessible. And this is by a gentleman named Callum McMenamin. And I think I got the name right that time, but you can tell me, Justin, if I did not.
2 thumbs up.
Yeah, right. And then the final thing that we're going to talk about is an article by a good friend of ours and yours, James Edwards, who has recently passed. And we're going to bring up one of his oldies but goodies, The Road to Accessible Drag and Drop, sort of as a tribute to him. And we'll talk more about that. Homage. Yeah, James is was an incredible accessibility voice, influence, friend, and we want to make sure that he stays in the forefront of people's minds. So let's start with the Title II thing, Justin. This has been, so it was Monday of this week. So we're cutting this podcast on 4/22. So it wasn't last Friday. The internet was sort of a buzz with like, hey, this is going to happen on Monday. And then on Monday it did happen. And essentially what happened, everybody was rushing. If you had 50,000 people or more in your organization, you were rushing for a deadline that, as of the recording of this podcast, is 2 days away. So it would have been this Friday coming up, April 24th, that you needed to have, in short, your digital assets accessible, based on Title II, which points to state and local government things versus federal. And then you had a year after that, essentially, so April 26, 2027, if you were less than 50,000 or less. But now, if you're 50,000 or more, it is April 26 of 2027 that it's due. So a week before that deadline hit, essentially, 5 days, I don't know, right? I guess a business week, they pushed it up by a year. And the same thing, if you're 50,000 or less, then that's been extended by a year. So your 2027 deadline is now 2028 for that as well. So I think we're going to talk about how we feel about that and the effect that we think it's going to have and all that stuff. But I'm going to turn it to you, Justin. What do you think? A week before?
It's funny, like it's like that. There's that like the whole dad joke of I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. No, I am mad and I am disappointed.
And disappointed both. You're mad and disappointed.
It's not like Christmas, like it comes around every year. Like this has been in the planning stages for years with this hard deadline that was like 2-3 years out. Nope. Week before. Punt.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it was a long time ago. It was April 24th of 2024 that the DOJ officially updated Title II of the ADA. And it was a very cool update. Like a lot of people were excited about it. And I think the coolest part of it was that it actually referenced the WCAG guidelines, right? It referenced WCAG 2.1 at the AA level. and we had never seen, like, Title III doesn't reference anything. Section 508 doesn't, well, Section 508 was the first thing to reference 2.0, WCAG 2.0, but to have it right inside Section 508's not ADA. It's just a federal government. I shouldn't say it's a federal government guideline, but just for people out there to understand why we're making this. So it's within the ADA, which was put in place in 1990. Within the ADA, it's the first time it's referenced a guideline that you can use as a guideline to follow to become accessible. So yeah, it wasn't like people didn't have time.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's not like no one had time. It's not like there wasn't time to plan for it or get money, together for it, or to figure out what properties and documents and things you had to make accessible.
Mm-hmm.
No, 2 years.
Well, so here's the reality, right? As accessibility consultants, we can tell you that we were busy.
Procrastination does not help.
And I saw this with the when the transportation department had a similar guideline for airports. It was probably the first one I ran into. That was 2014, 15, somewhere in there. I don't remember exactly. I have to go back and look. And then this has happened over and over and over again every time there's been some sort of a guideline. And I don't know what it is. I think it's just natural tendency to procrastinate, but also organizations can just fundamentally understand the amount of work that's involved. So it really ends up being this hair on fire moment. And this is what I'll say, Justin, is kind of twofold for me. If you are a person with a disability, if you are an accessibility advocate, or anybody that would be, identify as being in a similar group, this is a kick in the gut. Mm-hmm. Because it fundamentally potentially delays access to goods and services, and important ones, because we're talking about state and local. So your state and local websites, right? So my wife she goes to these business after hours. She was at a business after hours, and she met somebody from an organization called SCORE, which is a state-run organization that helps small businesses. So if you're a person with a disability that runs a small business and you want to access some of the resources that the state offers to small businesses, you're at risk of not being able to do that for another year, right? So that's the one side of it. And the other side of it is, if you're a panicked company, this might resonate as sort of good news to you, because now you have a year to get it right, where maybe you were likely sort of panicked and doing it last minute and doing the bare minimum you had to get your current assets up and running, but that doesn't mean that you've looked at your organization and how to maintain that, and how to make sure that going forward assets are created accessible from the start, and all that kind of stuff. So organizations, if they're really thinking about this, hopefully will take advantage of it to take a step back, not stop any momentum they have in getting their current assets and all that stuff done, but taking that step back to say, how do we tweak the organization to do this better in the future and to sustain it? And I'll stop there, because I know I'm talking a lot.
I always try to find like the best in a scenario, and the rosier picture that I can paint there is like all these state, local governments have been out there for the past 2 years working to do this. By moving the deadline, they've given you more time. That doesn't mean that all the work that you've done up until now is thrown away, or that you can't release it. So hopefully all of those state and local organizations that have been out there, burning the midnight oil to get to this deadline, have released their stuff, and we're going to see a more accessible web, more accessible,
I hope so.
accessible digital products.
Yeah.
Now, But for those things that maybe you just couldn't quite get to, or you had that one third party blah blah blah, like now you've got a year to address that.
Yeah, that's sort of the silver lining, I think, potential silver lining, I'll say, of the last minute change is that, well, maybe some people really like got this. And by the way, if there's still an HHS deadline out there, if you're like a medical facility or related to medical, that's coming around the corner too. So there's things to still think about. But I agree, and I think the danger, right? Like if I had to go to the CEO of an organization and say like, hey, this is the one place you can really misstep here, the danger would be to take your foot off of the gas and go, all right, we can deal with this later, and then come back around to it 6, 8, 12 months from now and lose everything that you've gained to this point and then be in the same hair on fire panic. And I don't want to see that happen, but that is what, like, I'm just afraid. And for the people, clients that we're working with, we're like, hey, let's make sure, because that would just be the real unfortunate part. I mean, that would be lost revenue, that would be lost efficiency, lost time. To your point, that's a whole year that you could have been accessible, which has a whole business ROI behind it. And if you don't believe me, give us a call. I will talk to you about that. It really does. It is very, very, very good for business, but that also often gets lost. So there's just a whole bunch that would do. So you've got to look at this as, let's keep this momentum going and let's show up in 2027 even better.
Yeah.
That's
you want to throw some doom and gloom in there? How about all those CEOs that are like, we're going to punt on this and we're going to hope that AI solves it for us in the next year,
or that the administration further modifies the regulation.
Yeah.
And I will quote Lainey Feingold: the rule is the rule until it isn't. So don't anticipate. That's how you really, really cause problems for yourself. And I think we've seen that AI is just not equipped to solve for accessibility in this way. Well,
I know.
Yet, but I don't know that I would have a hard time placing a bet on it.
I don't see it in the next
year
year.
From
It's
now.
not going to solve anything in the next year, but it's.
I mean, if you said, where's it going to be 10 years from now? I could see it. I could see a 10-year trajectory, maybe a 5. Like we'll see where it's, and solves it. Like, let's forget that word, where the landscape is significantly changed. We'll just say that, Okay. I think we could, everybody's got a lot of feelings about that extension, so we probably could harp on that for a while, but in the interest of not having a hours-long podcast, we should probably move to the next topic.
But we'll just tuck that one into bed for another year.
Yeah. Well, also keep an eye, like we'll definitely put some I haven't put content out about that yet, but we're working on some stuff and we want to put some stuff out there that is useful to folks. So we'll definitely do that as well, on top of what we just discussed. So the next thing that we want to talk about is this really interesting article by Callum McMenamin. And this is on EN 301549, and it's got a really catchy title that makes you want to read it, because it says EN 301549, the accessible standard that isn't accessible. And I think both you and I kind of like glanced over this one in the beginning and we're like, and then we reread it and we're like, wait a minute, this is interesting. Let's talk about it. And spoiler alert, right? I don't know that we're gonna fall in lockstep with the sentiments of this article, but it actually, the points it brings up are really worth discussing.
Where you want to start?
Well, that pause was hoping that you would start. I can start if you want.
Oh, I can. Okay. Yeah.
People probably want to hear you talk a little bit, Justin, instead of being blabbed the whole
time. So I think one of the things that was interesting that turned me off to this article kind of initially was he took a bit of a dive into like how the standard was written by ETSI originally, and that's released as a PDF. And there's, I don't want to call it a diatribe, but it's a little bit of soapbox, like which I get. Like, it's not Are there better ways to publish a standard? Yes. Is PDF pretty much going to be the standard for legal documents? Also, yes. Like
Mhm.
that is the medium that these type of documents have to fit into. He does bring up a great point that the Canadian government and the adoption of the EN
Yeah.
standard split it, like basically recreated the entirety of the document in HTML so that it would be more accessible. So
Mhm.
that's super awesome, and I definitely save that because the number of times that I have looked for stuff in that PDF document and not been able to find
Yeah.
it, annoying. But HTML it'll make it easier for me to I can get it, pull it down, have a local version, and
Yeah.
search it and do everything that I want to do.
Yeah, and that's when he says not accessible, like the big point that he's making here is that the document itself is not accessible.
Right.
The first the first thing being like it's just kind of in a PDF, and that's just not the go-to accessible when HTML is an option. But the part of it that really resonated with me, and again, I'll go back to my dyslexia, like the EN 301549 document, the first time, every time I tried to read it, really, but the first time I tried to read it, it was like it might as well have been written in another language. Um, to his point, it's a lot. It's just a lot of writing to begin with. It's a lot of like fancy words. So the cognitive load to parse this thing and understand this thing is insane. Never mind when you hit the tables and and he makes this great point about like you've got vertical text and you've got headings of headings, and it's one of the things when you talk about data and
Mhm.
accessibility, because I work with a company called Precision Campus, and they make a product that mobilizes data inside of higher ed institutions, inside of the institutional research department, so that that data can go out to
Yeah.
deans and they can use it. And this is all the statistical data that we collected about students and that kind of stuff. That's a lot of it's required by law that it's be collected. But anyways, we work with Precision Campus to make their product accessible. And part of that is that if they're going to mobilize that data, if they're going to make that data other meaning of the term accessible to multiple people in multiple ways, it also needs to be, in our term, accessible, because the likeliness that those people that it's whatever a third of the population, fourth of the population that has a
Mhm.
disability. So you've got all these people on campus that are a subset of them are going to need accessibility, and the data is not truly mobilized if it's not accessible. And it's stuff like charts. And it's like, what's
Mhm.
important about this chart? When I look at the charts in EN 301549, I can hardly break down the data in the charts, much less figure out what the heck is important about the
Mhm.
charts, right? So for me, that really resonated. And if you go to the WCAG guidelines, like I'm very used to looking at those now, but those are a lot for somebody to look at the first time.
Oh yeah.
Even that's difficult. So I think there was a meta higher kind of question in all of this around how do we take something complicated like an accessibility standard and address this accessibility issue of cognitive overload, or
Mhm.
people who are neurodivergent can access it. And I know a lot of people who are neurodivergent are actually turning to AI now to access it. And this is less accessible to AI, which is another point that that he made in this, is that Callum makes this really, and there's a great graphic too of a person who's blind walking with a sort of a luminescent figure that's glowing that represents AI, because of how the two people with disabilities and AI kind of have the same, they look at the internet in the same way, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And so people with disabilities often use AI to help. I know with my dyslexia, like I throw something like EN 301549 into Notebook LM so I can query against it or have summaries created or blah blah blah
Yep.
blah blah. So I don't know. I'm rambling at this point, but I really appreciated Callum's take on this thing's not accessible, you know?
Yeah.
because I'd had kind of had that experience. Now, if I go back to something multiple times, which is my job, I start to understand it very well. So I have ways around it, but
Yeah. He did kind of follow up towards the end of that document with another thing, which is he was kind of like, well, New Zealand, where he lives, could totally create their own accessibility standard, like could create their own version of this that would be accessible, and that would have, be written in plain language, all these things to make it easier for people to understand, but also build it on the web, so that it is easier for people to navigate and to gain access to. So access as accessibility, or availability as accessibility. But the part that I was like, oh, do you really want to go down that road? Because like the EN standard, like it's adopted. It's in the EU. Canada is adopting it. All these different countries are looking into it. To go off and build your own standard is great in theory, but it's like you're building something else that someone else has already vetted. And so do you adopt it so that you have a law on the books that everyone can then point to, or do you delay that initial adoption, the initial legal process of having your government adopt that particular standard, because you now have to write all of that content and go through the entire vetting process, which takes years and years. So which do you want to trade off with?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that was the area where I was like, like it's like, which can of worms do you want to open up here? And I think, and for me, I would almost, and Callum, maybe this is something for you to think about if you happen to listen to us here, is do you go do all that, or do you try to become an influence and an agent of change within what's already going on? So do you go in and say, hey, we want to adopt you all. This is some of the areas of improvement that we see, and we're going to adopt this, but we're also going to help out with resources to do something different, and you need to be HTML. So I think for me, that approach is probably a little bit more palatable, and I don't know how, I think Colin was just making a point, so I don't know how, like tied to that kind of thing that he was, because he's very good about being direct, but then also kind of towards the end of the document, he's like, here's some of the problems with my argument, so I think he's going back and forth trying to figure it out as well.
Yeah.
But
well,
I think that that's
to your point about the comparison against like the WCAG standard, like does the EN standard need a series of understanding documents that break down all of those things and put them into plain language that people understand?
Yeah,
and is that the now
case. That kills me too, though, dude. Like, it seems to me that like less is more, and that's what happens, is there ends up being the layers and layers and layers on top of it. Now it's something else you have to find, it's something else you have to read, it's something else you have to understand, and maybe that's what has to happen. I am not purporting to be any kind of an expert in how these things unfold, but to his point, like this document is just so thick and rich with stuff. Like, is there a way to make all those points in a more concise way? But anyways, I didn't mean to, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but it's a conversation.
It is a conversation. All right. Anything else about this document? And I really appreciated the article. I thought it was really well written too. Like, it's worth biting into. So we'll post it and everything like we always do. But I kind of recommend you read through it. It's well argued.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was a good post. It was, like I said, it was one of those ones that I started off reading. I was like, I don't know about this. But then put it aside for 24 hours, came back to it and was like, oh wait, now I understand the points that he's making. Now I understand where he's going with this.
Yeah. And by the way, thank you for the listen to article button. I really appreciate that. We need to start doing that with ours too.
Ooh, yeah.
But that's an added extra little kind of gift in a blog post. So thanks for that. Open Access is who is, I guess, who he works for and who posted it. But I just like that. It's just a classy move to have that. All right, Justin, you ready to
Yep.
talk about our buddy James Edwards? So James Edwards has been a voice in accessibility for a long time and has gained the respect of a lot of other important voices in accessibility. He's one of those folks that just sits and by the way, if he were listening to this, he would be turning red and saying no, 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 no. One of the most humble people that I've come across as well. Like he did not see himself as a big deal, but in reality, he had a lot of important things to contribute to our world of accessibility here. So the article, and it's gonna be hard to talk about the article, not him, but the article that we reached back to pull forward to pay homage, to pay tribute to James, is The Road to Accessible Drag and Drop. So why don't we start there? I've got a personal story about James, but let's talk about the article so I don't blabber on too much.
Let's do personal stories real quick because, like, I'll go first because I'm talking.
Okay.
This
is a conversation, Justin.
Like, it's crazy. Like, when he first got hired at TPGI, which is now Vispero, I never I was like, oh, James Edwards. Like, yeah, I've kind of heard that name. But I didn't realize that he also went by Brother Cake. And as soon as I found out that he was Brother Cake, I was like, I've been like following his blog and the things that he's been writing for decades. Like the things that he wrote on like CSS switching techniques and Ajax and like back in like 2006, 2007, like those were really great, thoughtful pieces about how these new technologies are going to change the way that people use the internet. Everyone, not just someone who's blind or low vision, but myself, others included. And they were really technical, thought-provoking pieces. And so I've been following him literally for decades. And so it was when I found out he was joining us at TPG, I was like a little fanboy.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really one of the cool things about our industry is that it's like you get to meet your heroes, right?
Oh yeah.
All right. I'm going to try to dive into this story. So I was really fortunate. I love to do podcasts, and I had this concept for a podcast called WCAG Files that I wanted to do I was going to do it as a personal kind of side project, and then see if somebody could pick it up, hoping like somebody like TPGI, who I was working for at the time, might pick it up, or Vispero, Freedom Scientific, like somebody. And the concept was that I was kind of the not so bright, this is true, this part's going to be true, the not so bright kind of like salesperson, like high level person, not not somebody who's going to sit there and audit your website and tell you how to code it for accessibility. And so I was looking for a counterpart that knew technical accessibility really well, but also could have a great, conversation. And the idea would be that we would go through the guidelines one by one. Each guideline or group of like 2 or 3 groups, if they were really simple to go through, would constitute an episode. We would call it the WCAG Files. And it would be the technical expert teaching me about the guidelines and why they're important. And we go on tangents and tell stories, stuff like that. So I started asking around as to who would want to do this. And almost like resoundingly, people were like, you need to talk to James Edwards. So Justin, this is where I get real lucky. I contact James and he's like, yeah, I love this idea. Let's do it. So every week, every other week for, I don't know what it was. I'm going to say like 6 months. He would call over from, I can't remember where he lived. He lived somewhere, I think, west of London.
Somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, so it was like this across the pond call. We had a time that we'd figured out that was good for both of us, kind of earlier in my morning. I'm on the East Coast. And we would get on, and the first thing we would do is we would just like geek out. Like we're kind of like sci-fi fans, and we would talk about, we always would, before the mics heated up, we'd have some fun conversations. So we talked a lot about Star Wars. We're both Star Wars fans. And then we would do this podcast, and we had the best time. And it worked. It, in my mind, like the conversations that he and I had, it just worked perfectly. They were entertaining. He was entertaining. He was smart. He could explain the stuff at a level that I could understand. And we would come up with analogies, and half of them were Star Wars. And it was just an unbelievable experience. The Wicked files have been lost. So I'm not going to go into the details, but due to a bunch of changes and stuff, I had turned these over to somebody to be produced. So to turn our raw conversation into a series, we had recorded an entire series, so all the 1 dots, and we were going to have the next season be the 2 dots and so on, right? Once we started a release schedule, so they're all canned. We're going to start a release schedule for the 1 dots. And long story short, I'm actually on a mission to try, and I should have, like, this is like, you guys can send whatever messages you want about how foolish I am, because you will all be correct. I did not keep a copy. I gave them to this person, and I just downloaded and didn't keep a copy. I was just foolish. So we're on a hunt to try to find the lost Wicked files, because I would love to release the season 1 that James and I did, and then I would love to gather some of his close accessibility friends and have them help me finish the series in his honor. That's where I'm at. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. And we never got anybody to pick it up, because all this stuff kind of started shifting around at this particular time. So anyways, a lot of regret there, but that's my story.
Yeah, we'll have to dig around and see if we can find them.
Well, yeah,
I'll get a leather fedora and a bullwhip.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll go find them.
This deep Indiana Jones cut. I like it. That was awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, we got a couple kind of strings we can pull, but we'll see if we can get a hold of them and get them out there. The world should hear that work of his. It was really pretty cool, and I just absolutely honored to be a part of it. And it's heartbroken that it's kind of died in the press, but we'll see if we can resurrect it. So anyways, why don't you dive into unless you got more to say about that, we want to dive into the road to accessible drag and drop, James Edwards.
Yeah. No, it's a great series of articles. It's on the Vispero website, which previously was DPGI's development blog. What I loved about James's approach, particularly to this series of articles, was that he kind of said, like, this is the state of things. Like, what is drag and drop? How is it supposed to work? How would we want it to work? Like, from different users' perspectives. Are there specific success criteria we should pick? Like, like the whole first article doesn't get into code at all. It's all about laying the groundwork for how do we want this thing to work? What do we envision it being? Then he gets into part 2. He actually starts like saying, all right, well, let's code this out. And he takes you the whole journey of creating that accessible code. There's links to the code base on GitHub, all that stuff. But he walks you through the whole process. And then third is like the testing. But it's a great series of articles. It gives you insight into what the thinking process is for a very complex component and what that should be. So for developers or UX professionals who are trying to understand, like, what do I really need to do in order to build out a complex component? it's a great example of the thought process behind that.
And I think part of his talent was just that. It was like really turning a technical subject like that into something practical. Like
Yes.
he's like, here's some checklists, here's this, and then the part one, part two, where he's like, let's talk about what this thing should be. Now let's give you practical examples. Like let's do some. It almost reminds me of that, like a really good science teacher that maybe you had in junior high or high school that could explain the science to you and give you like really fun, cool projects to work on and make everything accessible to you. Like, follow this and you'll be fine. And here's why, and here's what. So you not only do you come away with an understanding, but you come away with your hands a little dirty in a practical application. And, I guess maybe we should have had James Edwards rewrite EN 3015 and 49 because that's bringing it all. It's called a callback, by the way, Justin.
Missed opportunity.
Because that's what I feel like. I'm like, you look at the subject and you're like, man, if I tried to tackle this, it would have been a mess. Yeah. But he's got it all organized. It's easy to understand, blah, 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 blah. And I think he worked a lot on the TPGI knowledge base. And I think that's why he was put in that role, is because of his ability to break these subjects down like that. So, if this is your thing, right? Like go grab those drag and drop articles. I think that they're not only a good example of like drag and drop and gives you ways to think about drag and drop, but it's just a good example of how you should think through the process of accessibility, sort of beyond like, this image needs an alt tag, here's the alt tag, and here's a decision tree. You know what I mean? It's like it goes deeper into a more kind of profound approach to accessibility than that.
Yep.
What do you think? Did we do it?
I think we did it.
All right. Well, that last one was a little rough to get through, but I'm glad we did it. And this was, by the way, everybody should know this was Justin's idea. We're trying to come up with this other article, and he pinged me last night, was it? And you're like, what about bringing back? And I was like, a James Edwards article, and I'm like, let's do it. And so maybe we'll keep reaching back to the archives every once in a while for his amazing work as part of this. Yeah. All right.
Good stuff.
Any final thoughts?
No.
Okay.
My thoughts are clear.
Thoughts are clear. You've shaken it all out. All right. Well, good deal. Now that we have broken down accessibility. All right. What was that?
I said shaking it out like Taylor Swift.
We got to work on timing.
Well, you set me up and then you immediately went into something.
No, I didn't. There was a pause. We'll look back. There was a pause.
And I'm coming.
Oh, yeah. That's all right. We're gonna get this down, Justin. You and me. We're gonna be fine. Don't worry, listener. This is gonna happen. We're gonna get it. All right. You want to say anything else about Taylor Swift?
No.
Okay, good. Now that we have broken down accessibility for you, we hope you go forth and keep it accessible.
Thank you for listening to the Accessibility Breakdown by Inclusion Impact Accessibility.